The state has not fully funded community colleges for several years. I believe it's since 2002. So how can the affordability of community colleges be maintained?
You know, and that's a fair question, and I'm going to respond to it, but I can tell you that the next question should also be about nursing homes. And then the next question should be about fair funding for those with developmental disabilities. And the next question should be about the environment. See where I'm going with this? These are all very important factors that you have to look at as a chief executive. And that is in part why I responded to the initial question about the income tax increase. I don't want it to stay, but I have to have a comprehensive package for the long-term financial solution. Now to your point on community colleges. I am a strong supporter of our community college program for multiple reasons, and one of them is in regards to the economy and jobs. To use these types of facilities for the vocational technical training to help not just young people, yes, but also people that have skill sets that need to be retooled, people that have been displaced. I see that being the channel, the best opportunity we have to utilize for the continuing ability for skilled training. The other area that I think is important to do, we have the monetary award program, the MAP grants, in which I went to school at Illinois State University. I made pizzas at Avani's. I shoveled asphalt during the summers, and I was an RA in the residence halls. I paid my entire way through college without a student loan. A kid can't do it today. You can't do what I did and worked all the time and not graduate without some kind of debt. Well, we got to look at in our grant programs for our four-year universities, and bless them, that's wonderful. But the money's depleted before we get to the time that the community college students are eligible and know if they're going to be entering the programs, and the MAP grants are gone. One of a couple of areas. We need to expand the MAP grant opportunities, and we also need to look at where we can have, and I don't know the percentage, I'm willing to work it all out, a certain percentage of it is reserved so it's not all gone by the time you get to a four-year university applicant and is eligible for a community college candidate.
I do agree. Community colleges are one of the greatest economic opportunities we have. Community college districts know what the needs are for their community. And in some cases, it is a two-year associate's degree onwards to a four-year baccalaureate degree with additional 2 years. But in other cases, it's a vocational degree with a two-year associate's degree going into the workforce and meeting the demands of the community, and then maybe someday later finishing that with an additional 2 years to complete your baccalaureate. So we've got to make sure we do that. This is why I want to eliminate the State Board of Education, create a downsized department that will facilitate community colleges integrating into high schools. There's a lot of ways we can share resources to better support our high schools and better support our community colleges by integrating the two together. That's what we must do because it'll help meet our workforce demands, but it'll also save property tax resources and allow for a better combination of the resources in general. Not to mention the fact that if students can take advantage of a two-year associate's degree in high school, they won't need 4 full years in college, which means there's less need for state support of our 4-year programs because we've taken advantage of something the rest of the world's taking advantage, at least in first world countries. And that gives us the resources, which ties back to what Treasurer Rutherford said, and that is maximizing MAP grants, Monetary Assistance Program, for all degrees, not just 4-year baccalaureate, but for 2-year associate's degrees in community colleges and university degrees as well. But I also think there needs to be a tie into those MAP programs that are tied to success. There should be some risk on the part of the students. They have to perform, in other words, succeed in school if they're going to get state assistance. It'll help motivate them, I think, in positive ways and make sure that we're getting the best bang for our dollar when it comes to MAP grants.
Community colleges are vital to our economic development in our communities. I serve on the foundation board of my local community college, the College of DuPage. My godchild just graduated from Harper Community College, much to the pleasure, I'm sure, from my mother in heaven in nursing. My mom was the chief nurse at Hines Veterans Hospital, but my godchild just got her degree just recently in pastor boards and has a job at Good Samaritan Hospital in Downers Grove in nursing. Community colleges with technology and the medical profession, as well as the hospitality industry and retraining of workers are just crucial. One of the things that has really driven me crazy under the Democrat control in Springfield is what they have done with respect to tuitions throughout Illinois, not only at the University of Illinois, where it's now the most expensive Big Ten institution. You can go to the University of Kentucky as an out-of-stater, cheaper than you go to the U of I. I was the former president of Western Illinois University's Alumni Council or Association. I was at WIU on Thursday, and the tuitions at WI and Eastern and all our universities have gone up because higher education has just not been a priority of the Democrats who control Springfield. All the money's gone to expand public aid, welfare, and those kinds of programs, and we need to put a focus back on higher education, which goes hand in glove. I have a written best-in-class education program, goes hand in glove with job creation. So the community colleges like Richland met with your president during the Farm Progress Show here are just vital.
We'll move on. There's a couple of ballot questions that are trying to get on this November's ballot. One would be a yes for independent maps, which would create a less political way of drawing legislative maps, and the other would be one that would impose term limits. Could you give us your position on both of those ballot issues as they're proposed, and also how, if you think they would be successful if they were approved? And we'll start with Senator Brady.
Absolutely in support of term limits and of the ballot initiative to make a fairer mapping process. The last map was drawn by the Democrats. It was gerrymandered as best they can. Believe it or not, even though they did that, they couldn't draw enough districts to have a majority that I didn't beat Pat Quinn in. Under their best computers and so forth, I beat Pat Quinn in a majority of those districts. So we've got great hope in our state with the right people in the ticket. But we've got to stop the ability of politicians to gerrymander maps to meet their interests as best they can instead of a community's interest. The fair map takes it out of the politicians' hands and puts it into the hands of an independent, nonpartisan commission to take care of doing that. Other states have done similar things. It is a must if we're going to end the culture of corruption, clouding, pay-to-play politics, and the things that we want to do. It'll give our people back the power of their government and take it away from the Chicago politicians. Term limits is an initiative that I've long embraced. In fact, I sponsored a bill that's different than the one that's in front of you. It actually goes back to multi-member districts, and it downsizes the legislature slightly, and it provides 5 terms for House members, 3 terms for senators. I signed the petition for this one as well that's now put in front of us. I've got some concerns about whether it would be constitutional in the eyes of the courts because there's an inconsistency in terms of being elected to a 4-year term and have been term limited out after half of that term. But I'm going to support it in hopes that we can do that. Those are 2 musts for us. There's another initiative called the graduated income tax. It would be a killer of jobs in the state. The Democrats are talking about putting something on the ballot that would move us from a flat rate tax to a graduated tax. That is one of the few benefits we have when we sell opportunity in Illinois. We cannot let that pass. We've got to keep a flat tax in this state.
Thank you. Politicians should not be drawing their own maps, and we clearly have the greatest computer science university just east of this place in Urbana-Champaign, and politicians should not be drawing their own maps, so I strongly support the fair map. I voted for recall of public officials. I've long been a supporter of term limits for legislative leaders, and I'm voluntarily term limiting myself to run for governor, as is my running mate Jill Tracy, since we're both in 2-year terms. I don't have a problem with term limits, but the devil's in the detail on how term limits are drawn. We're sitting downstate. I'm going to warn you that Bruce Rauner's term limit proposal not only disenfranchises downstaters, but would decimate you. According to Professor Mooney from the University of Illinois, right down the road, the political science professor there, when you shrink the size of the state senate, which Mr. Rauner wants to do, you're going to have to travel further to see Chapin Rose or your state senator downstate. Up by me, it won't affect me much because my district's only 15 minutes. It's not, miles and miles and counties as a downstate district is. So you disenfranchise yourself and you dilute yourself, according to Professor Mooney, because when you shrink the size of the Senate, like Bruce Rauner wants to do, you empower the legislative leaders. And where do those legislative leaders live? Mike Madigan lives in Chicago. Chris Redonio, mine and Bill's leader, lives in Cook County. Jim Durkin, the new House leader, lives in Cook County, and John Collerton is from Chicago. So when you go with the Rauner kind of term limits, you make Chicago more powerful. But it's not a surprise that a guy like Bruce Rauner, who's the man that made Rahm Emanuel rich, who's responsible for Rahm Emanuel being the mayor of Chicago, and who's a city hall insider, would want to strengthen Chicago's grip on places like Decatur. So the Rauner term limit proposal decimates and dilutes downstate Illinois' representation and makes Chicago's grip on you even stronger.
I am a very strong supporter of the independent, non-political, non-incumbent process to draw maps. I believe it will be better, it will be healthier, it will allow people to be competitive. I strongly support that. I will be voting for that. The term limit bill, though, or the constitutional amendment that's being proposed, you really need to think through in detail. First of all, I support term limiting the leadership. The problem, in my opinion, comes from the fact that you have a person that's been the Speaker of the House for all but 2 years for almost decades. That's the issue. If you want to keep sending back to the General Assembly, pick it. Bill Mitchell, Chapin Rose, whoever else you may want to, you should have the ability to decide that, not because a clock clicked, if the map is drawn fair. The amendment that Mr. Rauner is presenting does a couple things. Number one, it changes the veto percentage to override a governor. Today, if the General Assembly wishes to override a governor, it's 3/5 vote. The proposal will move it to 2/3. It's basically emboldening and empowering the governor more. I don't care if it's Bruce Rauner, Pat Quinn, or Dan Rutherford. That is not good for representative government. Anyone in this room supports concealed carry? If that was in place, concealed carry would not be in Illinois today. It was not overridden by 2/3 vote. Number two, the proposal will expand, it will expand the number of House districts. When you have more House districts, do you think you're going to have them here in Macon and Livingston County? No. You're going to have them in Chicago and Cook County, so you're putting more House members there. And you're decreasing the number of Senate seats. Means when I represented the Senate, I had to go 110 miles. Under a new district, fewer members, you're going to be driving further. It's not good for downstate.
I guess since I'm the only one up here who's willing to vote for the term limit proposal that's in front of us now, and I will admit it's not perfect, but let me just say, there's only one way you're going to get term limits on leaders, and that's term limits on everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got to have something. If this makes it to the ballot, we've got to start by supporting it. We've got a guy in the office of Speaker of the House who's been there for 30 plus years, who's got an iron fist on this state. That's not good government. We've got to have something. So I would ask you to support this if it makes it to the ballot. And some of their concerns, I share them, which is why I initiated a proposal that went back to multi-member districts where every Senate district had 3 representatives. So there was representation everywhere, and bipartisan representation everywhere, building a stronger democracy. That's what we need if we're going to do this. But let me just say that you can pick this apart, but it is something I think we need to support if it makes it to the ballot, because it's the only way we're going to end tenures like Mike Madigan in Chicago over the Illinois House.
I don't have a problem with term limits. The devil's in the detail. But it's not the only way you make Mike Madigan go away. You know, the year after I was the chief of staff for that last clean and competent governor, Mike Madigan was no longer the Speaker of the House. Mike Madigan, because of an unemployment rate below the national average and a state government and a governor that you were proud of, we made Lee Daniels, a Republican from Elmhurst, the Speaker of the Illinois House. So the way to get rid of Mike Madigan is to get a governor in there that knows how to deal with him firmly. We kept the legislature in an extra 17 days the first year of that administration until we got a balanced budget, and you got an unemployment rate below the national average, and Mike Madigan became the minority leader. We didn't need some term limit mumbo-jumbo to did it. to do it. We did it through sound public policy and an unemployment rate below the national average and a balanced budget in state government. That's the proper American way to get rid of a tyrant like Mike Madigan, and we've done it before. So you don't necessarily need term limits to do it. It's been done before, and it was done on my watch.